Soren gradually becoming a good guy over the course of the Dragon Prince is not particularly surprising. Now, he starts as something of a lovable oaf, this goofball who has an unfortunate hatred for elves and a tendency to do whatever his father says, but he never strikes you as a particularly bad person. He's much more of a high school bully type than a hardened villain, or even a Zuko-like lost soul. What's more important, and more noticeable, and more interesting to me, is how Claudia does not join him in redemption. Though more serious seeming than her brother at points, Claudia is also a goof. She's also a complete weirdo. She's a silly person, and for much of the first 2 seasons of the show, she appears harmless, despite her proclivity for engaging in dark magical practices. She grinds up little creatures to use in dark magic, but in a world with many worse villains, it's easy to forgive her. For the first 2 seasons of the show, it is very possible to imagine her and Callum ending the show in a long-term romantic relationship. It seemed plausible even as Callum grew closer and closer to Rayla, especially over the course of Season 2. Yet, as Season 3 progresses, Claudia burrows deeper into darkness, and nihilism, and dark magic, and alienation. Soren eventually tires of his father's cruelty and his father's lack of empathy, so Soren leaves, and he implores Claudia to come after him and join him, and Soren wants them to go join Callum together, but Claudia can't. At first, she tries to get him to stay. He's kind of her anchor. He's the person keeping her in the land of at least sort of goodness. Not entirely 100% positivity, but still, for most of the first few seasons of the show, she has not completely abandoned all moral precepts. But after she loses Soren, she does. So she, perhaps foreseeing this, does not want to lose Soren. She wants to keep him by her side, but she can't. She can't do it. So she tries to get him to stay, and only when she fails to convince him does she finally decide to stand on her own and be by Viren's side by herself. This could be the decision that seals her fate. There is a direct line between Claudia's decision to stay with Viren and not leave with Soren, and her descent into resentment and a state of mind that prioritizes family loyalty and anti-elf sentiment above moral thinking and trying to do what's virtuous and good and beneficial to all. At the end of Season 3, she tries to use a Viren puppet to kill Ezrin, the king of Katalis, and her friend. Let's not forget how she tried to use this illusion to kill a little kid. Not a teenager even, but a kid. And the king. And the younger brother of the boy she has a crush on, Callum. This is how far she sinks in the span of a few episodes. Now, does she have anything against Ezrin personally? No, not that we know of, and yet she tries to kill him anyway. Just because he is the one standing in her way. He's the leader of the people who killed her father because her father went crazy and gave in to the influence of the Star-Touch elf Erebos and used dark magic to basically turn all his soldiers into unthinking, unfeeling zombies with no free will whatsoever. Claudia is astonished when Soren turns against her here, when he sides with Ezrin and attempts to kill the person he believes to be his father. Yes, it is just a puppet, an illusion created by Claudia, but Soren believes it's Viren, and he still is willing to kill him. And this just is unthinkable to Claudia. She can't believe someone would choose Ezrin over their father. It's a choice she never considered making, and I think we should contemplate why exactly that is. Viren loves Claudia significantly more than he loves Soren. I don't think that is particularly disputable. And Viren's love for Claudia appears relatively genuine. This is not an Ozai situation, though it's easy to compare Viren with Ozai. Ozai clearly sees his daughter Azula as nothing more than a tool to extend his power and control. He has no warmth or affection for her. That is not true of Viren and Claudia. Viren is not a cackling baddie. He's not your mustache-twirling antagonist, even though he does make some horrible decisions. When Eryth tries to get closer to Claudia, Viren is horrified. Even though at this point he has significantly fallen under Eryth's spell, he still retains enough of himself and enough affection for his daughter to disagree with the Star-Touched elf. It's worth wondering, though, whether Viren would have been so opposed had Eryth wanted to influence Soren instead of Claudia. I personally don't think so. Our perspective on Viren's psychology is limited at this point. We don't know enough about his story. We got a little information in the parts of the Dragon Prince novelizations that are told directly from his perspective, but that does not mean we know enough. We know his wife left him, in part because of his increasing affinity for dark magic. It is entirely possible that he resents Soren because Soren reminds him somewhat of the woman that he loved and lost. It's a factor we must consider. Still, it is impossible to really reach inside his head and decide exactly what causes him to feel what emotions and what prejudices and what resentments. People's emotions aren't that logical and that easily categorized. What is certain, I believe, is that Claudia is much more like Viren than Soren is. True, Claudia is significantly goofier than Viren. She's much more like Soren in that regard. But like Viren, she's relatively withdrawn and introverted, at least compared to Soren. She likes books and reading, and she's a mage. She prefers to learn magic and practice it. She's not a fist fighter. She's not particularly athletic, just like Viren. True, both Viren and Claudia can handle themselves physically if needed. They're not entirely unathletic, but that's not what they prioritize. They care more about their minds than their bodies. Think back to Viren's friendship with King Harrow as a younger man. It seems pretty obvious to me that Harrow was the bold, extroverted, obvious leader, while Viren was the nerdy sidekick, backing him up and making sure he doesn't die. That's kind of who Viren and Claudia are. They're relatively self-contained and self-reliant. They are people capable of tenderness and empathy, but they tend to not look outside their immediate worldview. They're rather myopic and self-focused. And of course, the most obvious comparison between them is that they both have a deep and troubling affinity for dark magic. Soren, however, is different. He's a jock. He's not particularly bright. He's athletic and muscular, but more importantly, he can empathize, and he has the ability to look within himself and introspect. He's not as enthralled by ideology and abstract convictions as Viren and Claudia are. It perhaps is natural and inevitable that Viren cares more for Claudia than he does for Soren. There is also the utility argument. Claudia, with her immense dark magic abilities, is more useful to him than Soren is. And this becomes very clear at the end of Season 3, in which Claudia literally brings him back from the dead. Soren could not have done that, but Claudia is an extremely powerful mage, and she's willing to make the sacrifices to revive Viren. Now, you could see Viren as being very cold-hearted here, but he's not only motivated by selfishness. That's not the entirety of the utility argument. He simply sees everyone, including himself, as being less important as human beings than they are in terms of how they serve an overarching ideological goal. Now, this is quite different from Harrow's humanist, Rawls-influenced philosophy, but it is also not the same as just being completely wicked-hearted. Now, regardless of why exactly Viren prioritizes Claudia and not Soren, what really matters is the overarching and long-lingering effect of that favoritism. Soren knows that he's not loved as much as he could be. He's not entirely stupid. He's smart enough to detect that. And so he gradually drifts away from Viren. And as he does this, he sees what Callum sees, what Rayla sees, that Viren, whatever his noble intentions, has kind of lost his mind, and he's so concerned with his grandiose political, sociological goals that he can't see all the people he's hurting. So he eventually decides it's not moral for him to stay with Viren, so he doesn't. He leaves, and he joins Callum instead. The flip side of this, the negative side, is that Claudia, who receives more affection from Viren, ends up clinging closer to Viren, in spite of everyone else in her life kind of turning on Viren. In fact, everyone else's antagonistic feelings toward Viren might, in fact, make Claudia feel more defensive and make her feel more of a need to stand by her father, even when he's advocating for policies that are pure anti-humanist madness, pure destruction and nihilism. She's always received his support, and as such, she's been loyal. She loves him, just as he loves her. It's perhaps too late now for her to turn back. I hope not, but she's already gone so far. She's already proven herself willing to kill the king just because he stands between her and her father getting what he wants. She's already proved herself willing to use dark magic to revitalize someone, to bring them back from the dead. Who knows what else she's willing to do. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Dragon Prince. It is a beautiful, thoughtful, clever show, and it is only getting better with time. I can't wait to see what they do as the show progresses. Here's hoping we get more seasons of the show soon. It's really brilliant, and I can't wait to see what they do with it going from here. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. I swear it will be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.